This episode is brought to you by Logify. Logify is your all-in-one platform for managing and scaling your short-term rental business. From easily publishing your own bookable website to managing all your day-to-day tasks just in one place. Whether you're a seasoned host or starting out, Logify can simplify your journey to building your thriving vacation rental business. And with Logify, you can accept direct bookings and payments, sync your reservations across all major booking sites, and automate your workflows, helping you save time while increasing your revenue. It's the smart way to grow your business, keep your guests satisfied, and enjoy what you do. So get started today and make sure you use the code VRF10, that's VRF10, for 10% off your professional and ultimate yearly plans when signing up.
I met Andy McNulty long before he started TouchStay. In fact, he was the first person I met in the industry many years ago, and we've remained friends ever since. Since co-founding TouchStay, he's developed a loyal, dynamic and motivated team from around the world who all work remotely. In this episode, we're exploring how to keep your remote staff inspired at all times and create an outstanding business through their commitment and motivation. This is the Vacation Rental Success Podcast, keeping you up to date with news, views, information and resources on this rapidly changing short-term rental business. I'm your host, Heather Bayer, and with 25 years of experience in this industry, I'm making sure you know what's hot, what's not, what's new, and what will help make your business a success. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Success Podcast. This is your host, Heather Bayer, and as ever, I'm super delighted to be back with you once again. Well, as ever, it's all change in the vacation rental business. You know, companies come, companies go, companies get acquired, they sell. It's a very dynamic and changing business. And you might have heard that the digital guide TouchStay was sold recently to a company called iTrinity. iTrinity is a rapidly expanding software as a service operator, and it's based in Slovakia and Czechia. And what they're doing is growing a portfolio of really highly profitable SaaS businesses, and they clearly saw that TouchStay was a great addition to that collection. So that may have come as a surprise, it may have come as a shock. I was happy, super happy for the co-founders, Andy McNulty and Joe Jones, that they'd found a buyer that they really resonated with and that they knew was going to look after their team. But let's go back a bit and just talk about my history with Andy and TouchStay. I mean, Andy was one of the first people I networked with way back in the early 2000s when I was just starting out with Cottage Blogger. I mean, that's just going back, almost coming up on 20 years ago. And I met Andy through a group, not a Facebook group, but it was an online group that we had at that time because there were no Facebook groups then. It was called Lay My Hat. And it was a UK-based forum for homeowners. So a sort of, an early form of a Facebook group. It was, I spent a lot of time on Lay My Hat. It was a tremendous network of owners, some of whom I am still Facebook friends with after all this time. But at that time when I met Andy, he was the Chief Financial Officer at Alexander McQueen, and he worked as CFO for Gucci as well. So a long history of the fashion industry. But he also had a passion for the vacation rental business, but as a guest, not an owner. And actually, Andy's never owned his own vacation rental property. But that passion caused him to start an online business way back in the, I don't know, I mean, Andy could probably correct me when we talk, but I think it was sort of 2007-ish. And it was called Getaway Earth, and it was sort of an early format of a listing site of sorts. And then he created GuestHook, which is still going. That's a company that creates really great content for vacation rental owners. And then TouchStay. And that TouchStay kicked off in 2014. But off and on over the years, I've met up with Andy on occasion. I'll never forget him making a flying visit to our Vacation Rental Success Summit in Toronto, and he just came for the day. Super supportive. So Andy took TouchStay from the germ of an idea of creating a digital guidebook to developing an outstanding product with an even more outstanding team. And he made that decision to bring the amazing, brilliant Tyann Marsink-Hammond on as TouchStay ambassador. And that was a decision that was nothing short of genius for anybody who's been to any of the TouchStay events that Tyann has organised. But Andy's mentored me in so many ways over the years, and I've valued the too few brief times we've had together. But this isn't ending, as Andy has agreed to join our advisory board for Thrive. So I'm going to be picking his brains for many more years to come, I hope. But he's also sticking around at TouchStay for a while during the transition, so they're going to get the benefit of his years of wisdom and counsel. So in this episode, Andy's going to share how he and Joe built such an amazing team at TouchStay. I mean, the team is located in the UK, in Spain, New Zealand, Ukraine, Turkey, Australia, and the US. And, it's no mean feat to be able to retain remote staff. But the TouchStay team are remarkably sticky. They're a loyal and committed bunch. And with more and more people wanting to work from home now, it makes a huge amount of sense to research what it takes to create that team that's going to stay with you over time. So without further ado, let's move on over to my talk with Andy McNulty and find out more about what it takes to create the best remote team in the world. So I'm super happy to have with me Andy McNulty, the former CEO of TouchStay. And we're going to talk about team building and remote teams. But first of all, Andy, welcome. You've been on the podcast several times. This is the first time you've come on since you sold the company. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling weird. It's the best way to describe it. By the way, I am still the CEO, weirdly, even though I've sold it. But that's why it's weird, because I'm transitioning it to somebody else.
Yeah.
And that means that I am still here. So I'm not enjoying that output of having sold, if you know what I mean. You do know what I mean, because you were the same.
Yeah, I went through exactly that. There's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of thoughts. The one thing I never had from the moment I signed that paperwork was a regret.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I had a lot of, not regrets, thoughts that I might regret it leading up to signing it. And you have to get over yourself pretty quickly there, because there's I should imagine it's pretty awful to still have that when you sign it. But when I signed it, I had exactly the right feeling that no regrets. It's the right thing to do. But yeah, that process going up to actually putting pen to the paper is really weird. It's like nobody ever tells you all those things that you'll feel about the thing that you built and what it will be like to let it go. And are you giving up on something too early, or how are the team going to be, or just so many things that go through your head. But yeah, no regrets having done it. Definitely.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And I'm sure everybody that sold a business has gone through these exact same things. Just tell me, Andy, we were just talking about this before I pressed the record button about, people asking. They asked me after I'd sold, well, I'm thinking about I might sell my business, and how did you go about it? And I think people have come to you and asked you that same question. What would be the first piece of advice that you would give to somebody who is thinking about selling a business?
Well, I would first of all say, it sounds obvious, but are you really sure? Because when you take that decision and then you get an M&A consultant, as we did, AJL, Simon Lehman, and then you start going out to the market and it's intense. And everyone said to me, you can't run your business and do this at the same time, Andy. And I'm like, yes, I can. And you quickly realize it's very, very all consuming. So it sounds obvious, but first bit of advice is, are you really sure you want to do this? Because there's a lot of heavy lifting and stuff in front of you. So you better be sure. And also you don't really want to mess anyone around. So if you're not sure, then best not to. Second thing, I would say is before you even think about selling, everyone says this, of course, don't they? But make sure you've got a good handle on everything, and you've got, particularly because there's so much due diligence and proving of things and contract gathering, make sure you've got as much of that as possible pulled together and in place, because it's not that they're not going to ask you. So it's not like, well, I'll leave it because they might not ask me. They're going to ask you.
Yeah, they are going to ask you every minute detail. And if they haven't asked you, they're going to. It's coming.
Yeah,
it's coming.
Right. I would also say have a pretty good idea of what you think your number is that you want to sell it for. And perhaps do some homework before you get to that stage. And you maybe engage the consultant you use, the M&A consultant you use, in a bit of kind of sort of discovery stuff about your business, maybe on like a 1 month exercise to deep dive into your business and assess it and tell you what it's worth, etc. Because that's really important too. If you don't know your number, then when you start going into this and you start going into negotiations, then you don't really know. In our case, it was two of us, Joe and I, with shareholders, of course, but mainly Joe and I. We also had to know between the two of us what we were comfortable with, and we didn't start out with the same number. We were fairly different, so we were slightly more complicated in that we had each other to think about too in the process, as you did too. You had that same thing.
Yeah, exactly. We went out about 3 years beforehand, before we actually sold. We talked to Jacoby Olin of C2G, and we talked to Ben Edwards, and just had those. It wasn't a consultancy; it was just a general conversation that we might be thinking of selling in the future. What should we do? And we talked about numbers with both of them. And yes, Craig and I had slightly different views on the numbers we were looking for, and we were actually surprised what we got in the end. But yes, it does require a lot of forward thinking, and it's not something you suddenly wake up in the morning saying, "Oh, I'm going to sell my business. Let's get it. Let's talk to somebody about it." You've got to think about it for a few years before. But anyway, I want to move on from that, because it's not the topic of this episode. Because I've known you for years, and certainly known the startup of TouchStay way back, and I've been call myself a rock star, TouchStay rock star. I've been such a supporter of TouchStay from the moment you started. And I've always been so envious in one way, and I can't think of the word for the other way, but, about the team that you have created. Admiration, I think, because all your team has been remote. You don't have an office, and you don't have people coming in when I started. I had people coming in and coming to my basement every day. But you started as a remote team. What did that team look like when you started out?
Me and Joe. That was it for a while, and we outsourced all of our development work to a small little agency in the US, and then to an agency in the UK. So we didn't have any in-house development team either. So the first thing we did when we had a little bit of money from the business was commit to a full-time developer. And we stumbled a bit with that in the early days. We didn't quite find the right ones, but eventually we did hit on the right ones. And the right ones were, I would say, people who are like us I don't mean clones of us. I just mean they have a similar kind of set of values to us. And all the people we eventually went on to hire, bar maybe one or maybe two, were recommended to us. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty easy, to be honest, at a team of our size. We were 17 people in the end. So it wasn't that hard to do that. I can imagine when you're growing, like Margot from Hostfully made a post on LinkedIn last week about, the benefits of remote working and how people say it won't work and how you prove them wrong and it can work. And she's got, a much bigger team. So for her, it'd be much harder. But for us, relatively easy, because we didn't have that big a team. So anytime we had a new position that we wanted to hire, I was literally in my network thinking, right, who do I know who may know somebody like this? Mm-hmm. So Kate was our biggest hire, our CMO. And she happened to be doing some work for a customer of ours called Beside the Sea Holidays. And he thought we would get on. He thought we were two like-minded people. So he just introduced us. And then, of course, that led to her coming on the team. Tyann was the same. I knew her way before Touch Day. I knew her when she was Glad to Have You days. And she's the sort of person that I want to be around. So that was obvious too. But every time, like Emma, our head of product marketing, for example, she was a recommendation from somebody you may remember, Jess Ashworth, who used to be at Logify. So it's just about finding the right people. And you can only find the right people by talking to the people that you know who know good eggs. And then you don't necessarily know if you're going to jive with that person, but that's where the interview process is. For me, interview processes are not really about technical ability. I can tell that from experience and from, well, if they've been recommended, they're bound to be good. For me, it's much more about, what's this person like just in talking to them? Can I chat about something and they'll be quite comfortable with that? Do they just smile a lot, and are they very, responsive and engaging? It sounds simple, doesn't it? It sounds silly almost, but you really need to have people who you feel like you can just talk to, because that's somebody you're going to be working with every day. So that's how we approached it. And that's how we ended up with the team that we've got.
So did you have a laid out strategy at the outset of growing the team? This is who we'll need for marketing, and this is who we'll need for PR or the other side. I mean,
eventually, yes, but not in the early days, because in the early days we were just bothered by, can we jump into Matt Landau's forum or jump into XYZ group and start hustling and get some customers and build a reputation and be present in that community and not be weird and just be normal. So for the first X, I can't even remember how long it was, but that was the goal. It wasn't about like, who can we get in the team? It was like, we don't have any money to get someone in the team, so how do we build? But once we'd got to the stage where we could hire someone, the first developer was the next step, and then eventually there's a couple more developers, and then at the same time around then it was Tyann, and then as we got more money, then when we took a bit of seed capital, so then we used that money to add a few more people to the team. So each point we knew what our next weakness was, or our most immediate weakness. Mm-hmm. So we were very clear on that. We knew kind of when we got to certain milestones what it is that we needed. But I wouldn't say at the very outset we knew that eventually we wanted to be a team of 15, 20 people with these kind of people in it. We just knew at each point what we needed to do next. So it was a matter of means to begin with, like just building up some money to be able to hire. And then it became, now we've got the money, who's the right person we need next to build whatever weakness we have in the business.
So I'd totally forgotten that Tyann was involved with Glad to Have You. And for those of you listening who probably think that the world started in 2014 when Airbnb came on the scene, there was HomeAway before that, and Glad to Have You. Am I right? Glad to Have You was their app.
They bought it. Yeah, they bought it in 2013. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when with Cottage Link Rental Management, I think we had Glad to Have You before HomeAway bought that out. So yeah, tis going back a bit, because I'd met Tyann at a HomeAway conference, and it was her first foray out into the conference world. Same conference I met Matt Landau at, and I think that was around about 2012. Gosh, that's a long time ago now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think very quickly HomeAway saw in Tyann what you saw in Tyann, that she had this amazing ability to connect with people and to build pretty much anything she set her mind to. And was Tyann pretty much your first hire outside developers?
Yeah, she was. She was in 2000. I made this mistake the other day when she had an anniversary, and I said, "Congrats, Tyann, you've been here 4 years or 5 years." And she went, "No, I haven't. I've been here 6 years." Well, one more than I'd said. So I think it was 2018, actually, she did start, but it was 2019 where I think we were able to get her in the team properly because we had some seed capital. But yeah, she was pretty much the first one. And it was serendipitous, really, because although we did know each other, the stars aligned at that moment because she was looking and she was interested and we were looking in it. So because we knew each other already, it just was natural. It was quite fortunate in a way. But yeah, she's a hustler, Yes. That's Tyann. She won't mind me saying that she often will do her planning for talks, etc., fairly late in the day, but that's how she's good. She's like very in the moment. If something goes wrong in the moment, she can find a way to instantly fix it. Where a lot of people might go, what do I do? She'd be like, "This is what we're going to do. Get on with it." So, that kind of skill in those early days is just invaluable. And obviously she's blossomed through the same period that we've blossomed too. She's obviously got a speaking gig thing going on now, and she's well respected in the industry. And so it's been like a really nice mutual journey for both of us, I would say.
And yeah, I remember Sun River when the three of us, we spoke at the Northwest Vacation Rental Professional Conference in Bend and did love languages.
I remember the love languages presentation. Yes. Yeah, I think it was actually Verma we did it at. That's what I remember doing.
Did we do it at Verma as well? Oh my goodness!
I think so.
Yeah, that was what because you weren't in Bend, were you? But you were in.
I weren't.
But you were at the.
I think Jess Vosel took my place.
That's
and then
right.
At Verma International, I then did it.
Right,
Yeah.
Interesting, because we have incorporated the love languages in the workplace into the Thrive course now. And that's taken, the original love languages to the next level and actually brought them into the workplace. And, knowing what the love languages are of your workmates and of your owners and of the community, and how impactful that can be to actually understand that concept. So it's still moving on, Andy.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Good to hear.
When you began really bringing on people, and it just seemed at some point that you had somebody new coming in all the time. There's always a new introduction to the TouchStay team. How did you actually bring them on board and do that onboarding process? Because it is difficult to do remotely, and I know this because all our staff were remote after a while as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about this during the due diligence process because they were asking what our onboarding process was like and did we have an employee handbook and all this. And I sat there and I thought, oh my gosh, we're crap at this. We don't have any of those things. So our onboarding process was like Monday morning, let's start a Zoom. Let's run through all the things that you need to start looking at. And here's a checklist of all the things that we set you up with. Here's your Slack, here's your email, here's your blah, blah, blah. It was very functional, I would say. And I wish hindsight, but having thought about it, I would rather go back and have a much more, not as structured's the wrong way. It does need to be structured, but a softer, more gentle intro into things. So instead of going straight into like functional stuff, it's more about let's have a discussion now about the kind of business we are and the value set we have, and stuff like our work patterns are up to you kind of discussion, and even simple stuff like just showing them in a fun way, who all the people are in the organization and what they do. Because looking back at it now, I'm pretty sure most time I just said on Slack, hey everyone, Emma started, please introduce yourself and have a half an hour conversation with her. But she didn't have no clue who was going to message her. Like, who is Tyann? Probably not her. She knew Tyann was, but you know what I mean? It was like, she didn't really have any of that context. And so we were a bit haphazard about it. We were very functionally focused. And that's weird for a business that tries to be less like that and more personable. But I would say during the hiring process, we probably did a bit of that. They kind of already knew the kind of people we were and the organization we were. And so maybe when they joined, it was more a case of, well, it was a case. It was, right, you're here. We need you. Here's what we need you to start doing. It was very functional. So, yeah, it didn't really have like a beautifully choreographed onboarding flow. It was definitely hustle again, I would say.
Well, that absolutely mirrors us as well. Because I remember, I think it was Pete asked the question when he and Justin were doing due diligence, and he asked the question about onboarding. And I'm sort of, I had a staff handbook that we'd done in the TouchStay guide. So we'd created a TouchStay guide, which was our staff handbook. And here we are, here's our processes, but they were pretty haphazard too. And we got into this, okay, on day one, we'll say hello, and then you'll go and sit with Sandra and she will blow your mind with the reservation system. And then you'll go and sit with somebody else. You go and sit with Caitlin and she'll tell you about the marketing side of it. And you hit the nail on the head. It wasn't structured. But probably, I wonder if you would go to them now and say, what do you think about our onboarding process? Did it work? They would probably say, too right, it worked.
Yeah, I think knowing our team, I expect they would go, it was great, but here's the things I would have done differently, or here's the things that would be nice to include, because they're I think if nothing else, we're definitely not offended by people saying you should do it differently, or why do you do it that way? And I would definitely open to that. So yeah, they wouldn't be short of ideas on how to make it better. That's for sure. But it should have been better. You know, it's just, and like just to clarify, we all are remote, so none of us are sitting in an office next to each other. So we just do the typical thing of relying on the tools like Zoom and Slack to get us most of the way there. But there's one thing actually we started introducing, which was one of the developers put us onto. It was a platform called Donut. I'm probably telling people who go, oh yeah, I know Donut, I use it. But Donut just allows you to put all your team inside Donut, and it will automatically schedule what it calls donuts, like coffee breaks. So I might be paired up randomly with Kate, one week, and then next time it's with Drew, for example. And it looks at both your diaries and finds a time for you, and you just have to show up, and you talk about nothing else in work life. You talk about whatever you want to talk about, it's not work. And that's I would say I've heard a lot of people in the team say how really good that's been, because it's allowed them to sit with somebody who they never would have come across if we've been functionally working together. But it's not intense because it's only half an hour. And equally, it's not a weird kind of let's all get together on a group Zoom call and talk to each other, and because that doesn't work either. That's just a bit weird. So that's a really nice automated process that we found just was a very light lift. Allows the team to get to know each other a bit more in a non-weird sort of forced way, if you know what I mean.
Did you get together face to face? How often did that happen?
We have done 2 annual gatherings the last 2 years. We were supposed to do one last week or the week before. A few different factors conspired against us, so we actually cancelled that one. Hopefully it will resurrect itself before the end of the year. So yeah, we should meet up once a year. That was always difficult though, because we had part of the team in Ukraine, and two of the team are men in Ukraine who aren't allowed to leave, and so they could never be present. So they were kind of sitting on a Zoom in the corner of the room that we all got together in person. So that was a bit strange. But then we have, obviously at the events we all get together, and the events is for me. I mean, we can talk about events all the time and the value of them, but one of the values is that we, not all together because we can't all go to them, but those that are there at the event get to hang out a bit with each other and go to dinner. And I actually tried to make a point of not doing too much external networking dinner stuff. I tried to make sure that we as a team, do have dinner together, because we never get that opportunity. So I tried to make sure that happens. And then sometimes functional meetups will happen. So Joe has the development team. I hit them over last year just as a development team. When Emma joined, we actually got together in Brighton in the UK. A few of us, because we had a couple in Spain, and we had Kate and I were still here in the UK. Kate's now emigrated to New Zealand, as you may know. So during that, we did try to get some functional group meetings, but honestly, it was very, very sporadic. As is totally understandable. This is not necessarily the ease practically to get everyone together, given the disparate locations we're all in. So I mean, a slight excuse. I probably, in hindsight, is one of those things I would challenge myself to think harder about how we foster it. But yeah, it's a hard one.
Yeah, I mean, we were all in Ontario. At least we were all in the same province, and we still only made it to get together once a year. And we would have our annual at the end of season lunch, and we all, we loved that. It was such a great opportunity just to get everyone together and unwind. Because that's the thing, with a property management company, you're taking everybody out on the same day, and that company still has to go on.
That's right.
Somebody's still got to be there answering the phones if something happens. Fortunately, we had remote staff abroad. We had remote staff in the Philippines that were able to just step in and say, okay, if anything, we'll let you know if there's anything that, right. If there's a fire, we'll let you know. But it was only really once a year that we did that. And we'd go to the conferences, we'd go to the shows. Cottage Life Show was the one place where we could all meet up at some point, because people would come in. I mean, that was a trade show for people buying properties and who had properties in Ontario. So we were there to source new owners, but it was, and we bring all the staff in to man the booth at some point during the weekend so that Craig and I could be there all weekend and we'd see everybody. And that was the first time at a Cottage Life show that I met Kathy, one of our reservationists, after she'd been with us for 2.5 years.
Wow.
So yes, I think that is an issue. I'm going to take a short break just now to hear about our sponsor. We're going to be right back with more from this great interview in just a few moments. So I'm glad to be back here again with Dennis Klett from Logify. Dennis, I'd like to ask you what Logify offers that stands it apart from the competitors, because there are so many now in this industry.
I would say overall it's the comprehensiveness of our feature set. We're really a true all-in-one software, but it's also especially the ease of use and the pricing point that we have. And that's primarily because our main customers are individual hosts or small property managers with anything around 1 to 20 rentals. And competition very much overlooks this type of customer segment, but for us, it's our core customers. So that's why the ease of use and the price point is so important to us. Then I think if we go feature by feature, our website builder, I think, is the most comprehensive website builder on the market. It's completely done in-house, and so meaning it's seamlessly integrated to your reservation system. We're really putting the direct bookings at the center of our platform. We have an entire team just working on building the website for you, while our competitors use third-party systems, and it's not at their core. With regards to the channel management, we have obtained the highest partner status with Airbnb and Vrbo. We're an elite partner with Vrbo. We're a preferred plus partner with Airbnb. We're one of the few players who are connected to Google Vacation Rentals, which is a fantastic way to generate more direct bookings. We have a full content sync, so we synchronize everything to those platforms. And we're also connected to Booking.com, which is especially important in the United States. It's up-and-coming booking platform over there. And with regards to the property management system, it's really the ease of use, the level of automation that we provide, everything in a super easy-to-use mobile native app, and where you can really manage your entire short-term rental business from your palm. And we have a fantastic customer service. So yes, it is a self-service software, but whenever you have any questions, we have a support team that you can email, phone, chat 24/7 during weekdays. And we have a free onboarding to get you up and running.
That is great. I've heard about your customer service. I've had some testimonials from people to say how that service is so great. Just touching on, you mentioned your staff in Ukraine. That must have raised a lot of challenges at the outset of the war in Ukraine. How did you manage all that? Because these were developers that were working on major features for TouchStay at the time.
Yeah, we had 3 developers in Ukraine, and our other 2 developers, one's in Montenegro and one's in Turkey. At that time, we didn't have Egemen in Turkey. He wasn't in the team, so there were 4 of them from memory. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. I think that's right. Yeah, it was hard. It's hard to remember that far back. I remember one of the things being very concerned about what we could do, and you can't do a lot. I remember thinking, wow, what should we do? What should we do? And Tyann said on one of our business meetings, well, why don't we ask them what would be most helpful? I was like, oh, good idea. So we did, and they came up with a couple of charities that they wanted us to support. They thought that was just the best way of doing it. So we did do a big Ukrainian aid campaign where we got our customers and our community, in fact, to contribute, and we matched that donation from the company side. And I forget how much we raised, but it was a significant amount. And then we also had Jane, our longest serving developer. She decided she wanted to go and help with the war efforts, put her skills towards helping with the war efforts, so her technical skills. And we just said, fine, go right ahead. Obviously, we couldn't pay her during that time, but she was going to get paid anyway by the government. But we kept her job open because she was so good, and we knew that she was so valuable to us, and said, take as long as you need. And eventually she said, I'm ready to come back now. So we were just, sure, in you come. So we tried also to, aside from just the monetary, we also tried to think about how we could best support them as individuals. Arthur, for example, is very active in his local church group. And he wanted desperately in those early days to help with the people who were moving out of Ukraine through Lviv, which is where he's based, which is on the Polish border across into Poland. So that whole kind of refugee element, he was very so we said to him, of course, do what you need to do. And I remember Yuri was much more, I just need to get on with my job and I need to do something, So there was also that aspect too. It's often you think about, well, like how can we help them? And sometimes the best option is just to say, your job is safe, like we're happy for you to work there, and as long as you're safe and you can do it, which Lviv was relatively untouched, as long as you can do your work, then that's a normality, that's a sense of being normal. And people who are in work as well are really useful to that economy, because clearly they need the as many people to be in work and to bring in the income to be able to support what is a very expensive war. So that's what we did. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't revolutionary, but it was definitely done, I can hand on heart say it was definitely done with as much flexibility and sensitivity and what can we do to help you aspirations, rather than just chucking money at the thing or I don't know what. We tried to think about it for sure.
Yes, yeah, I can imagine it must have been pretty challenging when it all started up though. From your perspective, just like, oh, does everything stop? Does everything stop in terms of developing, or do we?
Well, there you go. So we didn't even talk about the actual work getting done. Then we talked more about the people and their ability to exist. So that's what we started with. Then the work that needed to get done. Yeah, of course, eventually it did. But Joe, who is in charge of all the development side and the product planning, he's very resilient, and he's very stoic, and he's very detail oriented and very pragmatic. So he figured out, how we reorganize things and maybe put some stuff on hold, and like worked obviously with them, the developers, the team coming first, then what could we do afterwards in terms of delaying things or building different things. And it was the same during COVID. So we kept the development team on during COVID because we figured that there was so much more in the product that could be done when there was a focus on basically we rewrote the code. It was all infrastructure based because there wasn't anybody buying guides during those early days of COVID. So it was, well, we don't have many customers to support. So let's double down on how we can make the product better with this time we've got. It's just how we've always been. It's just, in a lot of ways, that's also what eventually we were almost holding the business back, because we're a bit like this. We needed iTrinity with all their experience to come in and buy us and leverage the product even further. We got to the stage where we tend to be very pragmatic and in the moment, and not always reactive. We've got better at being proactive, but we're very good at maneuvering and juggling and figuring stuff out. The hustle of building something. And that concept applied during COVID, during the Ukraine war, and during our building of the business. So that pretty much typifies how we approach everything, I would say.
It's interesting you talk about, the coding that went on during COVID. When we were shut down for 5 months, what did we do? We revamped all our touch day guides.
Yeah. So, in fact, our biggest customer sent an inquiry in May of 2020 and said, we'd like to consider touch day. And at the time we were thinking, well, how on earth are we going to win business? Like, where's this business going to, like everyone, like what are we going to do? And then out of nowhere comes this, they had 1,500 properties and so that was perfectly timed too. Like you said, people were thinking also about what they could do during that downtime.
Yeah. Let's move on to keeping this remote team motivated and engaged, but also how do you track their performance? It was something that was always at the back of my mind, although I was super happy with what everybody was doing. Were they actually, how were they contributing overall to the performance of the company, which we managed to, we could track it in a variety of different ways. How do you go about this?
It won't surprise you to know that we approach it functionally. My philosophy is always that I want everybody to feel empowered to do what they need to do to get their work done. And so I'm never going to be knocking at the door every couple of days and going, what's up? Like, what are you doing? And that can often then also have the negative side, which is sometimes I may be a bit too distant and maybe not supportive enough. That's me being self-critical. I think that hopefully most of the team will say, at least most of the team that I interact with will say, that I am supportive, but I feel very much that in leaving somebody to get on with stuff, there is this risk that then you appear somewhat distant from them. But I always made it my point during catch-ups to ask about how they are finding things and tell me about what, how are you and what's up and how can I help and those kind of things. And through that discussion, I think that just naturally allows that person to feel supported and empowered, because it's not like they would tell me stuff and I would say, well, okay, great, nothing I can do about that. There would always be okay, what can I do? And all right, let's maybe do this. And that could be anything from fixing a broken system or a broken process, which we've had a lot of as we've grown, because we haven't focused too much on that. So when new people come in, they challenge that. So it's being open to working with that person to fix that and empowering that person to fix that. But also through to, if there's any personal stuff going on, I start with the point, which is everything okay? And then I don't want to know unless you want to tell me. And if you're comfortable telling me, which a lot of them are, we'll talk about that. Mm-hmm. And so my style is that I will go all the way through to kind of amateur therapist as well, or just maybe with a listening ear. And that's my style. That's just the way I am. Like I can't be any different. But I would say if I was to force myself to think about what I don't do and what I think would be more beneficial would be some more structured planning to assessing performance and growth. Whether it's a quarterly structured sit down to go through a bunch of set questions. But I just struggle with that just because it's not me, it's just not my style. And I think my style gets it done in a different way, but my style means that not everyone maybe feels the same way. And so then I maybe lose a bit of sight as to those who do need that more structured approach. So yeah, I'm far from your ideal person to ask that question.
Well, this is it. I'm totally along those same lines, because I remember selling the business and going through due diligence, and one of the questions, and it came up with this long list of questions that they came up with at the outset, was collect together all the performance reviews over the years. And said, what performance reviews? Yes, yes. And there was I think Craig and I tried it one year, and we had the staff come down to my house, which is where I used to have the office in the basement. So some of them had already worked there, but they all sat downstairs and did a little bit of work while Craig and I sat upstairs and did these performance reviews, and everybody was so uncomfortable. It just, oh gosh, am I next? What are you going to tell me? And it just wasn't our way of doing things. I'm completely with you on that. And for us, Sandra's still there after must be 17 years now. Caitlin's must be coming up on 10. Christina 8 or 9. It's just our staff stayed the course, and they. They all did a great job. They're still doing a fantastic job without all the formal stuff. So I think... Yeah,
and I would say as well, Heather, that we're saying, that's the way we are, and maybe that's not the ideal way. But in a lot of respects, it is actually the ideal way, because the worst thing about an annual review, or even like a quarterly or half-yearly one, is it's very it feels very forced. It feels very routine, and that doesn't allow a free-flowing conversation. If you're talking to the people that you are, I don't talk to everyone in the team because I'm not in charge of everyone in the team, but those that I do have a direct relationship with, I'm talking to them regularly. So there's almost like an ongoing fluid performance feedback, and generally you don't need to get to that stage where it's disciplinary or something like. You don't need to get to that stage, because if you are, then you've either made the wrong hire at the start, and we've tried very hard at the start to make sure we make the right hire. But you then, if you have made the right hire and it's going a bit wrong, it's usually because there's a lack of direction from you, or a lack of understanding of what that person is struggling with. So I always try to make it my business to sit down. If someone's not clear about, there are a couple of people I think in the team who we've had that discussion with. I'm just not clear what my role is, and it'd be like, well, here's how I see it, but what is that what you see? And they're like, oh yeah, okay, and so we're growing all the time, and we're learning all the time, and so our style is fit for us at this time. You have to be a bit more agile, and someone's role that it is for this 6 months might subtly change for the next 6 months, because you learn things about the business and each other. So I think At the same time, I am cognizant that it's a two-way. So I'm very much talking about it as it works for the business and for me. But the recipient of that, the team member, in a lot of respects, may like that more structured. There are people, obviously, who like that more structured approach.
I just wanted to move on, Andy, to the awards that you've won over the years. TouchStay has won so many awards, but the most recent one, tell us about the Shorties Award, how it felt to... Tell us about the award and how it felt to get that. It must have been really bittersweet.
Yeah, it was. That was... It was Shorties Team of the Year award. It was the first time, the inaugural, it was the first time they'd done this award. And so we entered it, and honestly, it was really the one award that I wanted to win. Like the others are just a bit, you know. I don't mean that disrespectfully to the awards producers, but you know, often you don't get a lot of. There's not a lot that comes from it other than like a badge that you can put on your website. Yeah. It's arguable how much that really benefits the business. But obviously, I'm not knocking. Everyone would want to win it. Of course they would. But for me, Team of the Year meant something different. It really did mean something different. And when I spoke to Paul Stevens afterwards, he was telling me the quality of our submission was excellent. And I shout out to Ned on our team for that, because Ned's our content writer. But he was also very, very thorough in his entry, and it was written beautifully. And it captured us really well. And it was so thorough and detailed and kind of very reflective of us that it made an impact in our ability to win. So often, it's interesting, Paul and I were talking about this, about the quality of entries they receive. And he receives a lot of entries for all these things. And he said, honestly, Andy, you'd be shocked at how poor some of them are. I'm like, no, I wouldn't be shocked. I completely understand it. Like some people just go, yeah, let's throw in a award and not think about it. But it matters. So I'd say that. But secondly, yeah, bittersweet, because at the time I obviously knew that we were about to announce that we were selling the business. And, I was, without being dramatic, but I do tend to be a bit dramatic about these things. But I was waving goodbye to the team. It was bittersweet. But of all the awards at that time, I just couldn't. I was so happy is just the wrong word. Like touched. I felt really genuinely a warm fuzzy about it, and it really got me. And I was so proud that we won that, and that was the one that I wanted to win. But you're right, bittersweet, because I'm like, oh, you talk about regrets of like signing the deal. It's like when you hear that, you're like, oh.
Exactly. I was really disappointed, actually, because I was a judge on the Shorties Awards and I had to recuse myself from the team awards because I was asked to judge the team awards, and I had to recuse myself because of the connection that I had with TouchStay as an investor. And so I was really disappointed that I did not see that submission, because I went through, it must have been 60 submissions for the two categories that I was judging. And wow. Yeah, Paul's absolutely right. The quality of some, it was just not worth looking at them. Because
it's easy, isn't it? Then it's easy. No, it's like no.
Yes, and then there were a few that really came out, and it's just, oh my gosh, I know these people through what they're telling us about in this submission. So for any of you out there who are thinking of submitting yourselves for an award or getting somebody to nominate you, make sure you spend some good quality time on that submission. It really makes the difference. But you guys were so well deserving of it.
Yeah, and on that point, I want to say one thing that I think people have heard me say this before, and I think it's really important for me to say, especially now. We're a tech business, and I think there's a temptation in the tech world. I don't think the modern tech companies are like this too much, but there is a temptation to be a bit faceless and to say it's all about, SaaS compound growth rate and, churn and NRR and all this sort of stuff. But the reality is, especially in our industry, our customers are serving guests. And I always say, if we can be to our customers the way they are to their guests, which is, we're here if you want us. We hope you don't need us, because we don't want to be on the call or on the phone to you all the time, but we're here if you need us. That's the way we've always tried to approach it, in a human way. And I think there's a kind of an unseen value in the power of being human and personable in a business. And it's very hard sometimes when you have numbers to hit and ROI and cost of acquisition and all this stuff that's really important. It's sometimes hard to remember that at the core of it, all of those things are outputs of the team that you have. And so for us to win the Team of the Year was not just lovely and warm feeling and made me very, very proud, but it was also a reality of it was a kind of vindication is the wrong word, a seal of approval on the great work that they all do. And I think it's really important to know that the value that the business that we've built is as much about the team we've built as it is about all the other nuts and bolts, which are equally important, but the team is as important.
Well, it feels to me that, I know your developers are amazing people, and you and Joe are amazing people, but it's your team, the team that are out there dealing with those customers that just, and I've met so many of them. I've met Kate and Lauren and Alice in particular. Loved having Alice on the podcast as well.
That's right.
You just created this wonderful team. So, congratulations, Andy, on selling the business, but congratulations on building this amazing team, which is going to go ahead for iTrinity and continue the business to the standard that you created. So what is next for you?
Well, I've got a transition period with the buyer iTrinity. So we've got a new me. So some of you will soon get to meet and know Sivan, who is the new Andy. And so there's a process of, as you can imagine, handing over knowledge, handing over processes, handing over documents, handing over know-how, blah, blah, all this kind of stuff, which is very intense. And it's intense on the team too. They're all being asked to, say what they do and, what the problems are and what the opportunities are. It's very intense for everyone. So that's the first phase, get through that. How long that will be, I don't know. I'm here for months if they need. Well, I am contracted here for months more. So let's see. Once that's done, then I can decompress and I can literally, instead of holding my body in this taut, tight position that I have been last year, I can literally go and my shoulders can relax and I can relax and decompress, as I'm calling it. And no matter what I think about what I want to do next here, I know that during that process of decompression, my brain will turn in a different way and I'll have different feelings about things. So I've got 3 or 4 ideas in mind already. I don't want to start another tech business. That much is for sure. Got the t-shirt on that one. I want to do something else. But quite what I don't know, Heather. I love this industry. I'd love to be able to find some kind of path in this industry because I think I've said it before on LinkedIn posts or on this podcast that I like people, and this industry is, as my fashion career was people. It's the people aspect I always love. So I would love to find something in this industry. But yeah, transition to the new owner, decompress, then see.
Well, I'm hoping we can come back and talk to you in maybe another year and hear what you're doing in. Hopefully, I've got my fingers crossed that it's still in this industry. Andy, thank you so much for joining me. It's been such a pleasure talking with you, and I will see you again at some time in the future.
You will, and I want to say an official thank you, Heather, to you because I gave you the award, didn't I, at Verma last year?
You did, that was very touching. I have to say that was wonderful.
But you've given and you still continue to give so much to this industry, so much value and wisdom. And you have to me personally, I've said that to you before, and I think I said it in that speech too, that you've been that kind of wise head for me too. And I recognize that and I want to say it so that everyone hears that again. And if this is my last podcast in this industry, I want to be able to say that because I was, I've been on it a number of times. So yeah, genuinely, Heather, thank you. And I really hope you keep doing all the good stuff that you're doing because there's so many people that I talk to out there, not just me, who benefit from all the stuff that you do. So props to you. Keep going.
Thank you so much. And as I say, we will talk again.
Great. See you later then.
Well, that was great talking to Andy. I do hope he doesn't leave this business because he's just such a great person, and our business benefits from him being within it. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got you a little bit inspired about remote working. I'm sure Andy would be more than happy to talk to you. Now he's, in a month or two's time, he's going to have a little bit more time on his hands to actually talk about the building of remote teams because he just did an amazing job at it. And as you can tell from that conversation, he didn't have the structure. He didn't have a structure to do it. Talked a lot about functional management, but the proof of the pudding and all that, his team are just an amazing group of people. And I don't think that comes through the luck in the hiring process. That is the skills in managing people who are not, you're not seeing face to face every day. So, let me know. I'll put Andy's contact details in the show notes if you want to get in touch with him. So that's it for another week. I really enjoyed this, having run a remote team myself, to talk to somebody else who was so involved with remote workers. It was quite the pleasure. And talking about pleasure, it's always a pleasure to be with you. And I will look forward to having that pleasure again next week.
This episode was brought to you by Logify, an all-in-one solution that will help you start, manage, and grow your short-term rental business. Use code VRF10 and get started today at logify.com.
It's been a pleasure as ever being with you. If there's anything you'd like to comment on, then join the conversation on the show notes for the episode at vacationrentalformula.com. We'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to being with you again next week.